In the last two sessions, we spent our time looking at the many places in the Gospels that are the summary statements of what Jesus did that related to the subject of walking in the supernatural realm. By way of summary, before we get into tonight, what we're going to look at is individual healings. But first, from the point of view of a summary, that we see that the slide before that, Brad. Jesus was out and about and looking to minister to people. And he was always seeking opportunity to help other people. And maybe it's the one after. No? That's all screwed up. Again, good evening. God bless. We're going to look at a summary of the things that we looked at in the last couple of weeks. First of all, Jesus was out and about looking to minister to people. And the reason that is because he believed what God's word said about him, which is that he was sent to set people free, to minister to people. He held this in his heart, and because he had it in his heart, I believe it was in his life. If Jesus was cloistered at home, wasn't out and about, wasn't seeking to help other people, then he never would have. But he knew that this is what God wanted him to do. And what I take from that is, do I feel the same way about myself? Do I believe that God really has given to me the ministry of reconciliation and that he wants me to be seeking to minister to other people and bring other people to him? So then the other thing that we saw almost in all of the records was that teaching and preaching preceded the supernatural, the healing of people and the deliverance of people. And the teaching being setting forth the doctrine, and the preaching encouraging people to believe that doctrine. We also saw that every kind of sickness and every kind of affliction was dealt with. There was nothing that he didn't deal with. He dealt with all of it, every kind of disease and every kind of sickness. No one was incurable. There was no one who was ever turned away. They came to him. Repeatedly we saw that. The people came to him, which was an indication of their faith. There was no requirements to be healed. The only requirement was that you had something wrong with you and you had faith that Jesus could deliver you. Deliverance from demons was included in the Isaiah 53 revelation, which talked about what Jesus was going to do as the Redeemer. Part of that, we were healed by his stripes, we are healed. By his scourgings, we are healed. We saw in Peter that by his scourgings we were healed. And included in that is demonization and him setting people free from that. We also saw over and over again that he cast out spirits with a word, just a word. No big deal, no problem, just cast them out. And throughout all of this, time and again, God was glorified. The glory didn't go to Jesus. The glory went to God. God was glorified by the supernatural events that were taking place. And that Jesus moved with extraordinary compassion. We'll see it again tonight as we go through the individual records. The motivation in his heart was he really felt for the afflictions that other people endured. He had compassion. And he had no selfishness about himself. You remember those records where he welcomed the multitudes to come to him, and he ministered to them at days. There's that one record, it was probably 3 days that he ministered to people. He had no selfishness about him. And whenever someone was freed from their particular problem, the word would spread, and then more and more people would come. And I think that would be true today. As people receive more and more deliverance, then the word will spread and more people will get involved. The healing was like a calling card. We also noted that when Jesus ministered to people, he laid his hands on people. He touched them. And and that he didn't need specific revelation for each person that he ministered to, because he had the written revelation that this is what he was called to do. He was anointed for this specific purpose. So he knew that God had wanted him to do this, that God had empowered him to do this, and that God had directed him to do this. So he didn't necessarily need, he got revelation, we'll see tonight, at different times, but for the most part, he believed the written revelation that was about him. And then God was his refuge. He found that solace and that rejuvenation and that energy that he needed to do what he was doing in his personal relationship with God. He would often go away to be alone with God. He had absolute dependency upon Yahweh and autonomy from people. He wasn't dependent on how people responded. It did not matter to him. He was dependent upon Yahweh for what he did. And the signs and the wonders and the miracles that Jesus did, without a doubt, were the testimony that he was the Messiah. Now, tonight we're going to go to Matthew chapter 8, and we're going to look at the individual records, as many as we can get through with the time allotted to us. We're going to look at the individual records that are covered in 3 of the 4 Gospels, rather than just picking incidents that were covered in just one of the Gospels. I decided to pick ones that were covered in 3 of the Gospels, and I have them in your notes. You can look at them. We won't cover all of it in detail, but enough so that you get the point. In Matthew chapter 8, we're going to look first at the leper. In Matthew 8, verse 1, and Jesus came down from the mountain. Large crowds followed him. And a leper came to him and bowed down before him. And he said, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. And then Jesus stretched out his hand. He touched him, saying, I am willing, be cleansed. And immediately his leprosy was cleansed. And Jesus said to him, see that you tell no one, but go show yourself to the priest and present the offering that Moses commanded as a testimony to them. So the very first thing I see in this record, again, the man came to Jesus. And as we look at the other Gospels, we'll see that his approaching Jesus, as he did, was against the cultural norm of that day. He had leprosy. Leprosy was always considered to be contagious because it was highly contagious, although all of it wasn't, but some of it is highly contagious. I saw lepers when I was in Colombia, the country of Colombia, in Bogota. They had lepers that were on the streets panhandling, looking for money. So obviously, they did not have contagious leprosy. Then I had someone of the believers that was there. They went to where these people lived, their village, and it was outside of the city of Bogota. It was very similar to the way that it was in the time of Jesus. They lived on the outskirts of the town because people were afraid of them. In Jesus' time, we'll see that there was a big crowd here. This man totally ignored what would have been the cultural norm and was aggressive in pursuing his healing. And again, I think there's a great lesson to be learned there. We need to be aggressive if we want the supernatural in our life. If we want God to help us, we need to not get sidetracked by what other people think or what other the circumstances may be. We must be aggressive in pursuing our healing. And then he bowed down before Jesus, which is obviously an act of reverence. It's also an act of humility. The man was very humble. He had reverence for Jesus. He wasn't sure. He was sure that Jesus had the ability to heal him. He wasn't sure if Jesus wanted to heal him. He knew he had the ability to do it. He said, if you're willing, you can make me whole. And of course, Jesus' response was, classic. I'm willing. And then he touched him. The particular Greek word that is translated touched I don't know how to speak Greek, but it's the word hapto, H-A-P-T-O. That sounds like hapto to me. Hapto. it means, it doesn't mean like that type of touching. It means to embrace, or it means to fasten to lay hold of. It indicates more than a slight touching. I think, we've seen it numerous times that Jesus touched people when he healed them. And the mind picture I get about this situation is that this guy is a leper. He's a leper. Probably most people, well, not probably, most people would walk to the other side of the street. Surely nobody would embrace him. Nobody would touch him. And here Jesus does just that. I love the compassion and the tenderness of our Lord. And we can't be put off by the ugliness of someone else's affliction, whether it be mentally, emotionally, or physically. We can't allow that to push us away. It didn't for Jesus. It never did for Jesus. He was never put off by the severity of the problem or the ugliness of the problem. And in this particular record, we saw that there was immediate results. And again, I point out that Jesus wasn't afraid of contracting the disease from the man, because he did embrace him. He held him. He wasn't afraid of catching it. And it reminds me of a time when I was in Kinshasa, and I had been out and about for a couple of days and ministering to a lot of different people. We had a number of meetings, but there was one woman that didn't come to any of the meetings and didn't come to any of the gatherings, and that is because she had tuberculosis. Were you there, Timmy, with that? Yeah, and she didn't show up to any of it, and when they asked me if I would come and pray for her, and I went to the facility, the church facility that they had there, and it was just her and me and Kennedy and the translator, and she was definitely afflicted. She was skin and bones. She had to excuse herself while we were talking because she couldn't swallow. She had to go spit. She was nigh unto death. And tuberculosis is contagious. I gave that no thought. It didn't enter my mind. What entered my mind was, this is a soul that's afflicted, that needs deliverance, and God can heal her. And I grabbed her hands and held her hands, and God did just that. A year later, I saw her, and you would not even believe it was the same person. I mean, she was singing in the choir, and she had put on probably 60 or 70 pounds. I mean, I shouldn't say that. She put on a lot of weight. She'd probably be upset with me if I said. So Jesus was never concerned about contracting what other people had, nor should we. We shouldn't be concerned that when someone comes to us to be ministered to, that whatever it is that's their problem is going to come to us. There is that false teaching that a person could take the other person's sickness upon them. And that's certainly not biblically supported anywhere, but it is something that is current in our culture today in certain circles. I don't believe that to be true because the Bible doesn't communicate that. And then he tells the man, don't tell anyone. And this is as the different commentaries I read on this is, as to why did Jesus tell that? And he did that quite a few times. He told people, don't go and tell anybody about this. Some commentaries referred to this as the Messianic Secret. They wanted to keep it secret what he was doing. And maybe Jesus, the thoughts are, maybe Jesus didn't want to draw attention to himself, that it would complicate his ministry. Some had a thought that Jesus was here as the Messiah and that he was going to take over and overthrow Herod and the government, and he didn't want to see that kind of a power struggle take place. But really the answer to the question is found in Matthew chapter 12. And why don't I just read that to you instead of telling you all what the commentators say. In Matthew chapter 12, in verse 15, and Jesus, aware of this, withdrew from there, and many followed him. And he warned them, verse 16, he warned them not to tell who he was. This was to fulfill what was spoken through Isaiah the prophet. And of course, Isaiah the prophet spoke of this in I think it's Isaiah 42. Behold, my servant, this is one of the servant psalms. Behold, my servant whom I have chosen, my beloved in whom my soul is well pleased. I will put my spirit upon him. We've read this before. I will put my spirit upon him, and he shall proclaim justice to the Gentiles. He will not quarrel, nor cry out, nor will anyone hear his voice in the streets. A battered reed he will not break off, referring to someone that is afflicted. He's not going to hurt them. He's going to help them. Or a smoldering wick he will not put out. When someone's fire has gone out, he's not going to put their fire out. He's going to light them up until he leads justice to victory. And in his name the Gentiles will hope. I guess that verse 19, it really answers the question. He will not quarrel nor cry out, nor will anyone hear his voice in the streets. He's not going to be braggadocious. He's not going to be out speaking and bringing attention to himself. That wasn't the style of Jesus. Jesus was he looked like everybody else. It wasn't he wasn't boasting and bragging and like so many ministers that you might see today. You know, they brag about they did this and they did that and they did the other thing. Jesus wasn't like that. And he didn't, other than this, it doesn't really say, but it certainly indicates that as word spread, even when he told them not to spread it, we'll see what this, you can turn to Mark now, please, Mark chapter 1, even with this man, that it definitely impacted what happened with Jesus' ministry, because the multitudes swallowed him up. I mean, they came from all over. He also told this man to obey go and present yourself in the temple to fulfill the law of Moses, which is written in Leviticus 14. There was specific things that lepers were supposed to do once they were healed. There's a whole chapter on lepers who were healed, and that they were supposed to, very similar to the concern that has been expressed in the COVID thing. You wear the mask not only to protect yourself, but so that you don't infect other people, or so that kind of mentality that he was to clean up, he was to burn his old clothes, and he was supposed to cleanse his place of abode in case the disease was in any of that and could be transmitted that way. And then he was supposed to give a thanks offering to God, to Yahweh, for his healing. And the man didn't do that. He went out and told other people. I don't know if he went to the temple or not, but I know he went out and told other people. In Mark chapter 1, verse 40, and the leper came to Jesus, beseeching him and falling on his knees before him and saying, if you are willing, you can make me clean. And then 41 says, Jesus moved with compassion. He stretched out his hand and touched him and said to him, I am willing. And again, I just absolutely love that. He moved with compassion. Compassion is that conscientious awareness of the distresses of other people and the desire to alleviate it. When he saw this man, his thoughts didn't get lost in himself. His thoughts he had compassion. Having compassion is the pebble that's in that guy's shoe, you feel like it's in your own shoe. You feel for him or her what they're going through, and your heart goes out to them. This was the thing that motivated Jesus over and over again. He was very, very compassionate, and these are the attributes that we want to have be a part of our lives. We want to feel what other people are going through in their afflictions, and to be fearless like he was, and to be tender like he was, and to be willing like he was. When someone comes to you to be ministered to, immediately the intense focus should be, if somebody comes to you and says, well, can you pray for me? Or can you minister healing to me? Or can you counsel with me? Or can you give me some advice? Your focus should immediately be on that person and not yourself. So often the temptation that comes to people's minds is, oh, I don't know if I can do this. Well, I don't know if I got the ability to minister healing. And then we go through all of this and we get lost in ourselves. And that's not what Jesus did. It wasn't all about him. He was compassionate. He got immediately into the situation with the person. That's what that laying on of hands, that's what it means to me. He connected with that person. So no, it was no longer about Jesus. It was no longer about him being hungry or him being tired or him not having the ability or any of that. It was, here's a person who has a need. I'm going to help them. That kind of mentality. And again, we want to emulate that in our lives in endeavoring to help other people. No fear, no doubt, just immediately getting involved. No skepticism. This thing about compassion, you can almost open up any page in the Gospels and see Jesus' compassion. Of course, the most outstanding at the end of his life, the Last Supper. How do I get a heart that has that kind of love, that kind of compassion? Well, I think of the prayer in Ephesians chapter 3, and I pray that prayer for me and for you, that, for this cause I bow my knees unto the Father, of whom the whole family in heaven and earth derives his name, that he would grant you, according to the riches of his glory, to be strengthened with might by his Spirit, to be strengthened with might by his Spirit in the inner man, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts by faith, so that you can be rooted and grounded in love, and be able to comprehend with all saints what is the breadth, the length, the depth, the height, and to know the love of Christ that passes knowledge. I mean, there's a prayer that's written for us to pray, that we would have that kind of love, the Christ kind of love. There's no other way that we're going to kind of be that kind of a loving, selfless person as he, without God's intervention and God's help. But with God's help, we can be just like him. Again, in Mark chapter 1, verse 41, moved with compassion, Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him and said to him, I am willing, be cleansed. And immediately the leprosy left him and he was cleansed. And he sternly warned him and immediately sent him away. And he said to him that you should say nothing to anyone, but go show yourself to the priest and offer for the cleansing what Moses commanded as a testimony to them. But he went out and began to proclaim it freely and to spread the news around to such an extent that Jesus could no longer publicly enter a city, but stay out in unpopulated areas, and they were coming to him from everywhere. This man's disobedience definitely impacted Jesus' life. His disobedience of not telling everybody, and it impacted what happened with Jesus. Sternly warn him. See that you say nothing to no one. So you know what that says to me? God's not going to heal you through Jesus. God isn't, or however you want to think of this, you're not going to get healed based upon what you're going to do. And you can see this over and over in the scriptures. You remember the 10 lepers that came to him, and were they lepers or blind guys? No, 10 lepers, right? And the 9 of them went away and the one guy came back and was thankful. And Jesus said, well, what happened to the other 9? He didn't, they got healed. All 10 of them got healed. But they didn't get healed based upon what they were going to do. I think a lot of times people try to bargain with God. If you heal me, if you free me from this addiction, if you free me from this slavery, I'll be a good boy and I'll be a good girl for the rest of my life, which, that will get you through the afternoon. And I'm sure God is aware of that. He doesn't heal us and free us based on what we're going to do in the future. I know there's teaching in that regard, but I'm showing you what the scriptures say. This guy did just the opposite of what Jesus told him to do. And there's quite a few records that are just like that the people didn't obey him. So Person had a need. They came to Jesus with faith. Jesus never turned anybody away. Everybody who came to him, he ministered to. There was no requirements. There was no standard set. You have to do this and do that and do this. And after we're done with this and you're free, I expect you to join the church. I expect you to start tithing. I expect you to start doing the ministry of reconciliation. And I expect you to stop being the undesirable individual that you were prior to that healing. There's none of that. So we don't want to put that on ourselves. You know, if you got a problem, we got a Father that cares to want to heal you. Luke 5, I don't think we're going to read that. We're going to run out of time here. In Luke 5, 12 through 16 is the third record. The leprosy, in that record, it says the leprosy covered him, and his whole body was covered with it. Again, Jesus wasn't intimidated by that. So, in summary of this record, the leper was aggressively pursued Jesus. Jesus was focused and unconcerned about what others, or the man was focused and unconcerned about what others. He moved through the crowd and got to him. And again, we want to be the same way. He was humble. Jesus had compassion. He touched him without fear. And the healing was not conditioned upon the man's future. Let's look at Matthew chapter 12. We'll look at the man with the withered hand. Matthew chapter 12. And at that time, Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath day, and his disciples became hungry and began to pick the heads of grain and to eat. But when the Pharisees saw this, they said to him, "Look, your disciples do what it is not lawful to do on the Sabbath." And then Jesus said to them, "Have you not read what David did when he became hungry, and his companions, how he entered the house of God, and they ate the consecrated bread, which was not lawful for him to eat, nor for those with him, but for the priests only? Or have you not read in the law that on a Sabbath day the priests of the temple break the Sabbath and are innocent? But I say to you that something greater than the temple is here." Verse 7, "But if you had known what this means, I desire compassion and not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the innocent. For the Son of Man is the Lord of the Sabbath." And I wanted to read that to you before we get into the specific healing about the man with the withered hand, because it speaks again to the importance of, the very great importance of having compassion, and how the religious people were concerned about traditions and rules and regulations and ordinances, and they had no concern about humanity. He said, go find out what it means in Hosea 6:6. I desire compassion and not sacrifice. I desire compassion, not religious activity. Compassion, compassion, compassion. You want to be a minister, you want to help other people, compassion has got to be at the center of it. Forget the rules and the regulations, it's compassion. That's what he's saying to them. Then in verse 8, for the Son of Man, verse 9, departing from there, he went into the synagogue. And then verse 10, and a man was there whose hand was withered. And they were questioning Jesus, asking, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? So that they might accuse him. Their obnoxiousness is, it's just, they're concerned about that rather than the individual. And he said to them, what man is there among you who has a sheep, and if he falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will he not take hold of it and lift it out? How much more valuable then is a man than a sheep? So then is it lawful to do good on the Sabbath? Then he said to the man, stretch out your hand. And he stretched it out, and it was restored to normal like the other. And then the Pharisees, their response was they conspired how they were going to kill him. or how they were going to destroy him. Again, we see Jesus' concern for the individual, Jesus' compassion and care for the individual person. If we want to be like Jesus, this has to be a part of who we are. I remember at camp one year, many years ago, there was a woman at the inn who had a heart attack. She fell down and passed out on the porch of the inn. She fell off the rocking chair, and somebody came and told me about it. So I was nearby, and I ran up to the porch with the intention of praying and ministering to the woman. And the nurse got in my way. She decided, instead of being the nurse, that she was going to be the police and keep everybody away from the woman. And I really got indignant. I really got upset with her, because my mindset was, I need to be here. Someone's in need. I need to be here to pray for her. Maybe there won't be a miracle, but there'll be someone there who can represent Christ in that situation and pray for her. That's the kind of heart that we want to have. That kind of, that's what Jesus thought of himself. He thought of himself as being a minister or a physician. We'll see in a little bit. I also remember not such a glorious time in my life when I was in a train station in Paris on my way to Belgium, and the train station in Paris was huge. I mean, it was like Grand Central Station. I mean, it was something I was totally unfamiliar with. It's all in French. I don't speak French, and I'm trying to find my train, and I all of a sudden, in the distance, in the thing, someone fell down, and there was a crowd coming around them, and I felt like I should get over there, but I'm looking at my train. I'm going to miss the train. I'm not going to make it to Belgium on time, and I'm torn, and then as I'm going through, an ambulance came. And I went to the train, and it was the most miserable train ride I had had, because I felt like I had, neglected my duty. I represent Christ to the world, is the attitude that I'm supposed to have as a minister. That if somebody's hurt and afflicted, I belong there. That's how Jesus thought, and that's how I was. So that was one hellacious journey to wherever I was going. And but then shortly after that, I was in LAX airport in LA, and I was waiting for my luggage. I was there with some believers, and the luggage was going around. Everybody got their luggage except for me and one other guy. And the one other guy who didn't get his luggage passes out in front of me and goes into an epileptic fit. And so this time I didn't, I jumped on him. I grabbed his tongue, I held his tongue, and I prayed for him. And, he can't, because when you have epilepsy, you can swallow your tongue. And that's not exactly how it went. But, so my heart was in the right place at that time. Quite often my heart isn't in the right place. Quite often my heart is in the place, I'm on my way to church. I don't have time for this right now. I'm on my way to work. I don't have to, like the Levite and like the priest that passed by, and it was the Good Samaritan that had time. Where is our heart? What kind of compassion do we have? By the way, that guy got healed. He came right out. And my bag was going around the whole time. It was there the whole time. And I just didn't recognize it as being my bag. So that was kind of cool that God worked that to kind of rectify the crap that I did when I was in Paris. This was shortly thereafter. It's having a heart of a servant, having a heart and not. I'm not talking about ego. I'm not talking about pride. I'm talking about believing it's Christ in you. This man that we're studying, that we're looking at, he now lives in you. This is who you are in Christ. This is the kind of person you are. You're the kind of person that can't turn away when someone is hurting. You're the kind of person that wants to be involved. I belong there. You're not the kind of person, I don't think I can't get involved. No, yes, you can get involved. You should get involved because you've got Christ in you. It's that new man nature. Again, the religious leaders are all concerned about rules and regulations. What is the compassionate person all about? Again, verse 11, and I love this. I love this verse 12. Verse 11. What man is there among you who has a sheep, and if he falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will he not take hold of it and lift it up? If you got a sheep and it falls into a pit, if you got a dog and your dog falls into a pit, you're just going to walk by, or are you going to help him? You're not going to help him. Oh, it's the Sabbath day. I'll come back later, Missy. I ain't got time for you, Harry. Not now. I mean, no, none of us would do that. How much more so a human soul? This is very similar to what Jesus taught in the Sermon on the Mount. He said, aren't you more important than the birds? Aren't you more important than the lilies of the field? Remember we looked at that? You ask, you seek, and you knock, and God will respond. This is the kind of mentality that a minister of God has. That there is no inconvenience. It doesn't matter what time of day it is. It doesn't matter if it's in the middle of the night. It doesn't matter if it's on the Sabbath day. It doesn't matter if you're on the way to the supermarket. If there's a need and you're available to help, you help. And you don't avoid the problems. There was an accident tonight when I was coming back from the church this evening, right on Mill Road and 7. And it was a pretty bad accident. And all the traffic was backed up all the way up to the highway when you go up there. But I looked at that one and I thought, maybe I could get in there and help. And then I thought also, I just, there ain't no way. There's cops all around. They're directing the traffic. It just wasn't going to happen. Sometimes it's just not available. Other times it is available. Most times it is. We don't want to be like the guy that walked by and didn't get involved because it was inconvenient for us. Look at Matthew chapter 12. You did already, did you? How about Mark 3? Oh my goodness. Mark chapter 3. I said, oh my goodness, because I realized how much time had gone by. And he entered again into the synagogue, and a man who had a withered hand, and they were watching him to see if he would heal him on the Sabbath, so that they might accuse him. And he said to the man with a withered hand, get up and come forward. Get up and come forward. I think that these were inspired words that Jesus had. It encouraged believing action on the man's part. The man had to take some action. Once he stood forth, he was then associated with Jesus. He would have been a labeled man just like Jesus was. This is one of those records where it doesn't seem like the man came to Jesus. Jesus just got involved here. And he said to him, is it lawful to do good or to do harm on the Sabbath? And the rest. And then in verse 5, he says to the man, stretch out your hand. This was not an uncommon thing for Jesus to give specific instruction for people to do when he ministered to them. In Matthew chapter 9, with the paralytic man, he said, get up, pick up your bed, and go home. He told him there was specific action for him to take. In Luke 17, he told the lepers to go to the priest and to report to the priest. In John chapter 5, at the pool of Bethesda, he said, get up, pick up your pallet, and walk. In John 9, he put clay in the blind man's eyes and said, go wash in the pool of Siloam. In Acts chapter 3, Peter said, silver and gold have I none, such as I have. In the name of Jesus Christ, rise up and walk. Get up, walk. So there was specific inspired action for the person to take. This particular record, we see it both ways. The man stood up. He stood up, and when Jesus said, stretch forth your hand, he obeyed. He did what he was told to do, and then he received his healing. He didn't get the healing before he did what he was told to do. It was as he did what as Jesus told him to do, then the healing came to pass. And when, if you're being ministered to and that should happen to you, then you follow the direction. Or if you're ministering to someone else and God inspires you, that's what you speak forth. We'll skip again Luke, but in here we can see that, again, Jesus with his compassion, he maintained that laser focus here. He didn't let the negative guys, he didn't let the negativity of the people around him to deter him. I think, doesn't it say he was angry at them? And looking around at them in verse 5 with anger, grieved at the hardness of heart, he said to the man, "Stretch out your hand," and he stretched it out. Jesus didn't allow his emotions to deter him from what he was doing. He was angry that they were so hard-hearted, but it did not derail him from doing what he was supposed to. He didn't have an outburst of anger. He didn't start cursing at these guys. He kept focused on the guy that was wounded, the guy that needed help. He stayed focused, and that's, there'll always be things to distract you when it comes to helping other people or receiving help from someone. There's always going to be things that will get in your way, that will prevent you or cause you to have doubt or to give up on it. We see record after record after record where people pushed through and did not allow anything to deter them from getting their deliverance. And that's the kind of attitude that we want to have, and that's the kind of the control that we want to have in ministering to other people. We don't let something derail us. Your emotions will wreak havoc if you allow them to. They'll push you all around.